Sometimes it's hard to stay in touch with those you care about. Keeping in touch is what we're talking about on this episode of the Driving with Rob podcast. Have you ever had somebody tell you, keep in touch? Or somebody say, get in touch with me later? I want to stay in touch with you. Another way of saying it is, keep me in the loop, keep me informed. I want to stay up to date and up to speed with what you're doing. Keeping in touch. It's very hard to keep in touch sometimes. Even with the COVID-19 lockdown, when everybody has loads and loads of free time, it's still kind of hard to keep in touch with people. But now it's probably more critical and more important than ever to keep in touch with people, especially people who need help. Elderly people, people with compromised immune systems, who either can't go out or they're still afraid to go out because the governor hasn't told them it's safe to go out. But that's a whole nother podcast. But staying in touch with people, I had a good friend named Tony who passed away a couple of months ago. And it was hard. Tony had had health problems for a number of years. And, it finally caught up with him. But Tony and I had the kind of friendship where we didn't need daily contact with each other to know that we were there for each other. If he needed me for something, he knew all he had to do was call. He didn't have to wonder if I would be there. And I felt the same way about him. That if he could help me with something, I didn't have to wonder if he would help me. But along the lines of staying in touch, I often felt guilty because I hadn't called him. And we communicated over Facebook. And whenever Tony would disappear from Facebook for a couple of days, I would think, I need to call him. Something must be going on with him because he was pretty much on Facebook every day. And as often as not, over the last few years. Whenever he would be off Facebook for a while, it would be because he was in the hospital or in a physical therapy recovery facility. And I remember this one time a few years ago when he started really having a lot of health problems. When I called him up, I immediately started apologizing for not calling sooner. Because Tony's one of my dear friends. We'd been friends for nearly our whole lives. And we were both old men. So I started to apologize for not getting in touch sooner. And Tony said, because this was the kind of friend he was, he said, don't feel bad or don't feel guilty for not calling me. The phone line goes both ways. I haven't called you either. So there my friend immediately put my mind at ease. Because me not keeping up with him, not staying in touch with him, he said, well, I haven't stayed in touch with you either. When you say stay in touch, just that phrase is interesting. Because when you say you're going to stay in touch, you don't actually touch each other to stay in touch. It's one of those odd little phrases that we use in the English language, that I'm sure in the word origin, that this was a phrase that was common before the invention of the telephone. When stay in touch literally meant face to face, close enough that you can actually touch somebody. And it's kind of a shame that we don't think of staying in touch as a face to face, close enough to touch situation. Staying in touch just means talking to somebody. Well, before the telephone was invented, you had to be close enough to touch somebody to have a conversation with them. And over time, staying in touch came to mean just simple communication, pretty much any kind of communication. It doesn't even mean voice anymore. If I send you a text message or a direct message on Facebook or Twitter, then we have kept in touch. But nowadays, staying in touch just means staying up to speed, staying in the loop. I know what's going on with you. You know what's going on with me. We have stayed in touch. And with the COVID lockdown, what you hear a lot is the phrase, the new normal. The new normal is you don't have face-to-face meetings anymore. Staying in touch doesn't mean that you're close enough to touch. But I don't want that to be the new normal. I think of it as the temporary abnormal. But for now, that's the world we live in. And it is important to stay in touch with people, especially people who can't get out. As I said earlier, the people who are afraid to go out, or they have a compromised immune system and it's actually dangerous for them to be in crowds of people who may be able to pass the virus on to them. So it's really important to stay in touch with these people. And I encourage you to do that if you know somebody who can't get out or who hasn't been out. Call them up. Because a text message is good, and we consider a text message keeping in touch. But voice is better, because when you hear somebody's voice, you can interact, you can have that back and forth exchange. And that's a better way to stay in touch. And I really hope in the near future that we can go back to face-to-face meetings where you can go out to dinner with a friend. You can invite friends over without fear. You can let people in your home without fear. And you can actually have a face-to-face meeting with somebody and actually be in touch. Stay in touch. That's the podcast for today. I appreciate you listening. Thanks for downloading. Share it with friends. Leave me a comment. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.